Mohamad, thank you for that. I want to excuse me, actually pick up on that point first of all, because Mohammed Basheer told us that Mohammed al-Baradei was looking at harnessing the internet for a presidential run in Egypt, and Mohamad Kayali's told us that only 21%, I believe it was, internet penetration in Egypt. So you've got a huge disconnect there. Why don't you start, Mohammed?
Should I'll speak in English right now. It's okay. Yeah. I might have had a bit of tuning. Well, as I said earlier, the real problem is with internet penetration, because we have a huge amount of followers for al-Baradei via the Facebook account, the Twitter account, and the whole social media campaign that he's doing. But at the same time, looking at numbers, 21% of the Egyptians using the internet, I find it a little bit strange for me, because I need more internet users to support al-Baradei if he is really the good choice for Egypt, for example. So, yes, it is strange, but the nature of internet users, the nature of activists in all countries is always that they write so much, they write a lot. We will, on a level, we will think that the internet penetration in this country is huge, but looking at numbers, it looks not enough.
Mm-hmm. Questions from the floor? Oh, come on. Right here, Josh.
To the point of the internet penetration numbers that you said, typically when I think of lack of use of the internet, financial reasons tend to be the primary reasons why people don't get access to the internet. Is that the driving force here, or are there any other factors that are driving the low numbers?
I mean, take a look at the Gulf countries, for instance. It's not just about financial reasons, but for some reason the culture of internet usage is only based in main cities. Now, if we took for instance, the money asked for internet access in Syria, it's not that much, but we don't have enough infrastructure. For that, a lot of people are switching to mobile operators to use broadband because the infrastructure is a bit better. So, and I would like to mention a very interesting statistics about Syria in particular. We have an internet penetration ratio of 3,000% for the last 10 years. So this growth is enormous. And this growth will be, I think it will be doubled for the next 5 or 6 years, looking at the infrastructure, the development of the infrastructure, and at the same time, the young people who are actually in a hunger for the internet itself.
Sir.
أنا سؤالي للمحمدين يعني. I have two questions. Why do some bloggers in the Arab world get arrested and some don't? Why do some bloggers have a higher margin of freedom than others? In other words, are those bloggers just a nuisance to the governments, or are they a real threat to the governments? This is one question. The other question is, you mentioned that some bloggers start out as political activists and then they turn to blogging to express their views. Can we consider that a form of traditional journalism still, or do you think it's citizen journalism or both? Or
Mohammed?
Okay, I think like why some bloggers got arrested. I think like in the Arab world, like we have like maybe two kinds of bloggers. We have like the famous bloggers. Just like most of them now like moved to the West and they are start blogging about the internal issues from the West, and the government, they can't arrest them. And some of them maybe in the same country, but like they are famous, like and all media will support them if they got arrested. So the government like will think more when they think to arrest them. But like some others, the new bloggers, he start blogging with his real name. He start like 2-3 posts against the government from the beginning, and they arrest them, and he can't do anything. Yeah.
The other thing to add to that is I've been following the very few, I think 3 at this point, arrests of bloggers in Morocco over the years. And one of the things that I've noticed is that each time it's coming from a lower level of government. It's not an order from the top. And so you've got someone in a local government, usually a smaller town, who is arrested for something that he's done online or something related to something that he's done online or a protest. And so it's not always at a high enough level that there could be any sense made of it. And another thing is that it seems that in other countries as well, that often a blogger is arrested to be made an example of, and therefore in turn, other bloggers tend to self-censor. And I've noticed that with a number of countries. Would you agree? Yeah.
Not having much luck here. Jillian, while I've got you there, on the issue of censorship, which you spoke about self-censorship of countries in this part of the world, do you, with conflicts, sometimes it requires a generational shift. You need to almost a whole, and this can be any type of conflict we could apply to it, it requires a whole generational change, a new way of thinking. Do you think that can apply to censorship in the Middle East? Because arguably there's more and more content coming out there and more of it being censored.
Yeah, I mean, I think a generational shift is perhaps what's needed. But, you know, in some cases, and I'll use this example again, in the case of Pakistan censoring all of these sites in reaction to one page, you can look at that and say, okay, there are a couple of options here. I understand that this material is incredibly offensive in this region. I understand that it's incredibly inappropriate. So you've got a couple of choices. You can not block anything. You can allow Facebook to remain open and allow for discussion to happen there instead of blocking it. You can block that simple page, which is, I think, what the intention was. And the way it seems to me is that there was a misunderstanding in the Pakistani government of the fact that they could actually do that. Or you could go ahead and block everything and, you know, cut off all sources of conversation, which to me is absurd. And so, yes, I mean, I think that it requires a different way of thinking about how to come at these problems. And my personal opinion is that, you know, if you're going to block a page here and there, I don't agree with it, but fine. But at the same time, leave these platforms open for discussion of these issues, because discussion is what's going to solve them in the end, not blocking.
Very good point. Sir, back there. And then you in front, sir, in the green shirt.
Hi, thank you. And forgive my somewhat ignorant question, but I'm curious if someone could explain to the audience the relationship between Al Jazeera Talk and the Al Jazeera Network, if there is a relationship. If there's not a relationship, where are the synergies taking place? What is the driving force? That kind of thing.
Okay, Al Jazeera Talk is independent organization. Me and 6 of my friends, we run it. We started that 2006. We are not a part of Al Jazeera Network, but we are corporate and we get support from Al Jazeera Network on some training things for our correspondent. To invite some of our correspondents to Al Jazeera forums, we have 7 of our correspondents here. Al Jazeera doesn't control anything editorial on Al Jazeera Talk, and they don't fund us.
Hi, I've got 2 questions, sorry. 2 questions for you. I'm interested in blogging in the Gulf. One, I'm trying to track down a blogger out of Saudi Arabia who blogged about 6 years ago named Mystique, and she just kind of vanished. And she was a really interesting blogger, and then she just went off the face of the earth. And the second question is, can you give, we're familiar with some of the examples of people being arrested in the region. Are there any examples of real social change or any sort of uprising as a result of the arrests, or as a result of some of the issues that were being blogged about in the Gulf specifically?
I think in the Gulf, I think what's been happening recently in the issue of Riyadh rain is the most noticeable issue recently, because there was an arrest for a famous Saudi blogger called Fuad Al-Farhan earlier. Now, in the case of the Riyadh rain recently, again, a lot of Saudis on Twitter actually started to report about the event, talk about it, try to regulate the reports about this event, try to post photos, and he was one of them. And at the same time, himself, Fuad, he started this website Bashir talked about the aggregating all videos, aggregating all the tweets about this event in particular. So yes, there is something happening, and there's a famous Saudi blogger called Saudi Jeans, and he also blogs a lot about domestic issues. So arresting, in particular, did not affect, for instance, what Fuad did criticizing the government officials who actually were responsible for these, for building roads in Riyadh or the infrastructure of Riyadh and the problems that were with it regarding the rain. So I think there's a growth in being able to actually report about stories. The consciousness around the Saudi tweeters or bloggers is huge recently regarding these events in particular, or asking the government to actually go and ask the responsibles for this and actually punish them because of what they did. All of them almost asked for this. So this is a change.
Last question there, please.
Yes. My question is on like we're seeing with activists are becoming more, cleverer with the way they use social platforms. But aren't governments, and maybe you can just speak about governments in certain Middle Eastern countries themselves becoming better at the way they censor? I mean, what made me a bit scared when I saw the US State Department thing, where they have people on there commenting, which is good to a certain extent, but a government that is maybe previously censoring certain things decides maybe this is a nice strategy, we'd go out instead of blocking views, we just flood it with views that we want to be heard, that kind of thing. Are we seeing any of that in the region?
Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't realize the question was for me. I was trying to pass him a note. I'm hesitant to say this because I feel like I don't have confirmation that this is true, but Israel is a really good example of that. Israel has, I don't know if they actually have clandestine people who go and comment on blogs. That's a rumor. It very well might be true. But they've put out this social media strategy that, really the only word for it's propaganda. They're, holding Twitter press conferences and granted, they're not a country that has arrested bloggers and they don't filter. So it's a poor example in response to your question, but it's really the only one I can think of. However, there are a couple of other governments in the region that have started to get online a little bit. Bahrain is an example. Bahrain has a couple of foreign minister, is that correct, Suad? Is it the foreign minister? Lost my mic. The Ministry of Information and Culture in Bahrain is now on Twitter and, in a sort of unofficial capacity. But so you are seeing an increase in governments getting online. Aside from Israel, though, I don't know of any cases of sort of propaganda-ish commenting, or even just transparent commenting in that sense.
So I think also Jordan is good example for this, like the Queen Rania. Like she always on Twitter and she always tweeting and promoting what's happening in the Jordanian blogosphere. Even the King Abdullah of Jordan, he used to comment in some famous blogs and to show he is monitoring and see what's happening. Thank you.
And that is where we're going to leave it. Thanks to our panel for this discussion on internet censorship. And thank you to all of you. Just some quick comments just from Riyad Menti just before we go, who is head of social networking at Al Jazeera Online.